Welcome to International Women's Day 2022, recognized by the United Nations and a national holiday in many parts of the world. It started back in 1911 after thousands of women garment workers went on strike and marched through New York protesting against their working conditions. And as today, these women were in less organized workplaces than their male counterparts, were in the lower echelons of industry, and working at low wages. The day has come to be marked with celebration as well as with protest, but its legacy remains steeped in the struggle for women's rights. It's appropriate to measure how far we've come and celebrate the gains that have been made, but also to recognize that there are yet more steps to take. For example, British banks used to automatically fire women's staff on marriage. In 1950, National Provincial became the first of our banks to allow female staff who were married. The other banks soon followed. So some sectors seem to be making slow progress on the gender pay gap. And I note with horror that mandatory reporting was waived during the pandemic. Obviously, the UK government viewed it as unimportant. This year's theme is breaking the bias. My arms crossed into an X is to show commitment to calling out bias, smashing stereotypes, breaking inequality, and rejecting discrimination. Together, we can break the bias. My dream is of a more equal, inclusive, and resilient post-pandemic world. I identify with the powerless and cherish diversity in all its forms. People differ in so many ways: age, race, sex, physical and mental abilities, for example. And there are also secondary differences: nationality, religion, language skills, and so on. But I believe that the most important aspect of diversity is about qualities such as belief, attitude, values. All the differences enrich me. I celebrate diversity and try to practice acceptance and to facilitate resources. If I'm to move from bystander to ally, I must educate myself as to the issues and then unlearn and relearn myself as a full human being. I start by rededicating my crusade for women's empowerment and tell my woman's story with pride. I'm going to outline the business success that relied on women, but beware, the older I get, the better I used to be. When Mozart was my age, he'd already been dead for 50 years. I set up one of the first high-tech companies in Britain. That was back in 1962. Science and technology have opened up a wonderful life for me. But let me explain the background which laid the foundations of my personality. The Holocaust echoes through my memories. As a 5-year-old, I was one of the 10,000 unaccompanied child refugees from Nazi Europe. I came to England in 1939, clutching the hand of my 9-year-old sister on a Kindertransport train from Vienna. Each refugee train had just 2 adults for about 1,000 children aged 5 to 16. That refugee ordeal taught me to cope with change, indeed eventually to welcome change, which is a real life skill in today's digital world. I chose to try and live a life that had been worth saving, so I don't fritter my time away. Starting at 18, I had a junior position in the public service, a sort of mathematical clerk. I was horrified to find that remuneration went by age and gender. One pay scale for men, another lower scale for women. When strong young men offered to carry my equipment, I used to reply somewhat aggressively, "I believe in equal pay and will carry my own things." Nowadays it's, "Oh, how kind. Thank you so much." My bully of a first boss taught me how not to manage, but also the disciplines of work. Work is not just something you do when you'd rather be doing something else. And always, but always, you have to recognize that you can't do anything by yourself. It's all a matter of teamwork, except for innovation, which is a solitary event. I didn't go to university, but rather studied for years at night school. Promotion was at that time problematic for women. My boss refused to even put me up for promotion. Men stated explicitly that they would never appoint a woman, any woman, to a graduate position. What did I do? I applied for that graduate position as an outside candidate, and I got it. Few women are defined by their work, but I am one such. I moved into computing in the mid-1950s, amazed at how high my pay was for something as enjoyable as software. I'm in 2 computer museums as a pioneer of the industry, so you see before you a museum piece. My second employer was a small computing company where I was for the first time responsible for the work of a small team. Frustration was still every day. I learned not to bash my way through obstacles, but rather find other routes, go around, go over, go under, go elsewhere. Which is precisely what I did when I hit the glass ceiling for the umpteenth time. I set up my own software company to circumvent all the gender issues. A company of women, a company for women, an early social business designed to resolve those gender issues in a financially sustainable way. Nearly 30% of Victorian businesses were run by women. In this century, it's only 21%, a salutary reminder that social trends can worsen as well as improve over time. There weren't any women role models in 1962, let alone any that were Black or minority ethnic. No one expected much from women in work because all expectations were about home and family responsibilities. I couldn't accept that, and so challenged the conventions of the time. What did I do? I changed my name from Stephanie to Steve in my business development letters, so as to get through the door before anyone realized that he was a she. I've been Steve ever since. In 1975, 13 years from my company's startup, sex discrimination legislation came in, which meant it was illegal to have our pro-female policies. as a fine example of unintended consequences, my woman's company had to let the men in. And thereon, the company became well balanced between the sexes, which is as it should be. In no way was mine a typical business. In no way am I typical. Money is all very nice, but when it's tied up in the business, you don't notice it. Not everyone is interested in the power that serious money brings. I'm far more interested in the achievement and realization of goals. So I try to lead differently, to act as an advocate and role model for women in the economy. Role models provide images of real people, valued for their contribution to the real, not celebrity, world. Although nowadays girls are getting the best marks in school and dominate many universities, there's still a need for such role models and to encourage women and girls in critical thinking. We all have to become creators as well as consumers. People laughed at the very idea of selling software. At that time, it was given away free with the hardware. But they laughed even louder at my crusade for women, because I recruited professionally qualified women who had, as was then the norm, left the computer industry on marriage or when expecting their first child, and structured them into a home working organization, a modern cottage industry for women. That working from home crusade for women was the founding philosophy of the business. Of the first 300 staff, 297 were women. Every survey of how to recruit women comes up with two things: flexibility and work-life balance. My company was flexible in the extreme. I've never achieved work-life balance. It's been all work, which is not healthy. And I've watched female colleagues struggle with the same issues and always advise them to get help, be it domestic help, childcare, and/or reduce their paid working hours. I was a pathfinder for women, and for years was the first woman this, the only woman that. Firsts don't have to be onlys. All things financial were then biased against women, and we were disbarred from certain activities. In those days, women couldn't work on the stock exchange or drive a bus. I couldn't even open the company bank account without my husband's authorization. One needed a male signature to rent a car or television, and of course, to get a mortgage. My generation of women fought the battles for the right to work and for equal pay. My company couldn't have started smaller. On the dining room table with what would now be £100, but financed by my own labour and by a second mortgage on our marital home. We pioneered the concept of women returners, women going back into the workforce after a career break, euphemism for having children. We pioneered all kinds of flexible working, part-time, full-time, annual hour and min-max contracts, home or office-based, salaried or consultant, paying people from a cafeteria of benefits, profit sharing, and later co-ownership, when I got a quarter of the shares into the hands of the staff at no cost to anyone but me. It was my firm intention to take it to 100% staff ownership, but for family reasons, I had to do a distressed sale of some of the equity, which put paid to that dream. The best I achieved was 24% ownership, and through a highly complex voting system, 62% staff control. So I was doing lots of innovative things. We disguised the part-time and home-based nature of the workforce by offering fixed prices, one of the first to do so for software. Who would have guessed that the programming of the black box flight recorder for supersonic Concorde was done by a team of some 30 women working from their homes? When I started my company of women, people said, "How interesting." But of course, it only works because it's small. And as the company grew, the same people commented that, yes, it's sizable now, but of no strategic interest. And later still, when the company was valued at nearly $3 billion, and I'd made 70 of the staff into millionaires, they had the nerve to comment, "Well done, Steve. But of course, it's nothing new." What an attitude to change. Let me now speak about some of these specific employment issues that women present. Apparently, 23% of all women have taken time off work because of their menstrual cycle, with a further 36% not telling the truth about why they were unable to work. 59% in total. So it can affect performance as also innovation. A handful of administrations in Spain offer menstrual leave to women, trans and non-binary employees, up to 8 hours a month, the time to be recovered within the next 3 months. And such policies have long been enshrined in law in many parts of Asia, but many women are reluctant to use the entitlement, thinking it would damage their careers. In 2016, a social enterprise in Bristol called Coexist became the first workplace in the West to introduce menstrual leave. Incidentally, their management reported an increase in commitment and productivity. Women's employment position when pregnant is generally improving worldwide, but which corporate will be the first to understand how a termination, miscarriage, or stillbirth affects a worker? And women returning to work after maternity leave might welcome somewhere to use a breast pump in privacy and comfort. Finally, the menopause. Mine was easy. I used to joke that I didn't have time to pause, let alone have a menopause, but I was publicly embarrassed by hot flushes and putting on weight. I went up 3 clothing sizes. But some of my female colleagues had more serious health issues in the menopausal years: cholesterol, heart disease, strokes, and osteoporosis. What fun we women have. We floated on the main London Stock Exchange in 1996, and there were 8,500 staff, men and women, when our by then FTSE 250 company was acquired after 45 years and so delisted in 2007. It's now part of the Sopra Steria group, a European leader in digital transformation. It's given me enormous wealth as well as years of pleasure. People refer to my overnight success, but it was a slow burn. 25 years before we paid a puny dividend. Eventually, of course, my company was run by professionals, achieved financial success, and made me a wealthy woman. Definitions vary, but everyone knows that a positive gender pay gap exists. And there are numerous blame the woman excuses because women are less educated, less motivated, less ambitious, because they're less willing to ask for a salary rise. But resistance is entrenched in male-dominated institutions. Perhaps post-pandemic, we shall be inspired to move from women's issues to concentrate on an effective culture for everyone. But that shouldn't mean that we women can stop challenging gender discrimination or inequalities. So speak out whenever you encounter sexism. Having built a successful company in an exciting industry sector, I devote myself post-retirement to extended social responsibilities. Every single code of ethics mandates the strong to look after the weak. So let me talk about my venture Philanthropy. The challenges are exactly parallel to business, but the rewards are social, not financial. My first not-for-profit is called Autism at Kingwood. Kingwood is a place near where we live. It was set up to provide long-term support for adults with autism. And my late son was the first resident in the first home of that first charity. As fast as I could afford it, I drip-fed a total of about £2 million into it over a period of 17 years. Yes, you heard correctly, 17 years before it became freestanding. And those years were difficult and painful. Today, it sustains itself and supports over 300 vulnerable people with autism in 5 English counties. I'm enormously proud of the good it achieves and of its vision for the future. My second charity is a residential school, Prior's Court, for pupils with autism aged 5 to 25. I had become wealthy by then, this was 1997, so was able to invest some 30 million in property, to buy professional support, and to meet startup losses. We must never confuse morality with frugality. It took me only 5 years to get that school managerially and financially independent. And today it is of world renown, turns over 20 million a year, and is acquiring further accommodation to increase its capacity to do good. My third and most strategic charity, Autistica, funds medical research. Pure research, such as the Autism Brain Bank used by researchers worldwide, and applied translational research. For example, studying why autistic women die on average before autistic men. And Autistica also mounts an effective lobby to drive public policy in the UK and, though to a lesser extent, Europe. I'm delighted with all three, and my speaking fees and book sales go to Autistica. Thank all of you for your support. It is appreciated. And as Austica's president, I can assure you the money is well and carefully spent. Today, those three charities, Kingwood, Prior's Court, and Autistica, together employ over 1,000 staff with, you may like to know, a negative gender pay gap. There are also 2 teaching robots. I continue to do what I've always done, grow people, challenge the status quo, and try to make the world a fairer place. I didn't completely forget my computer roots, far from it. I gave 5 million as a social investment in founding support of the new IT livery company in the City of London. Livery companies are traditionally associated with charity, education, and trade, and made another founding investment of over 10 million to what became the Oxford Internet Institute, focused not on the technology, but rather the social, economic, legal, and ethical issues of this network of networks. I am proud of its overall understanding of life online. Philanthropy is all that I do now, nothing to do with stamps. I need never worry about getting lost because several charities would quickly come and find me. Of course, we enjoy things that we're good at and are good at the things we enjoy. And apart from the time commitment, I've also worked at going beyond myself to see the broader picture. This means more than having a personal goal like I want to be rich. It means having goals for your community, your profession, and your country. I found during difficult times that to be able to go beyond oneself, you need a healthy selfishness to invest in yourself, your mind, body, and spirit, to ensure your own self-preservation and development. Success, whatever that means to you, is found at the very edge of failure. Let me share a secret of commercial success. Always surround yourself with people who work smarter than you. My colleagues will confirm I do that. The heart of management is about making things happen. And that's only worthwhile if done with sensitivity to social issues. It's people, not organizations, who make the world go round. It's people with all our strengths and failings who are the powerhouse at every level of life. The creative spark for new enterprise comes from people. It's their drive that brings an enterprise to life and their professionalism and dedication to quality that makes it flourish. I find it pleasant to toil purposefully on worthwhile projects, to have something to get up for each morning, and to see money working to good effect. Charity does not necessarily come wrapped in cash, but the more I give away, the richer my life becomes. Ladies and gentlemen, the purple, green, and white of this brooch flag are the colours of International Women's Day, symbolising justice and dignity, nature and hope, and purity. Many women wear red to indicate strength and power. May the force be with you. Thank you all very much.